The moment the news spread, something unusual happened. Not just statements, not just headlines, but the same songs started appearing everywhere, quietly, respectfully, played on pianos, sung in churches, shared without captions. This wasn't about a sudden announcement. It was about how one piece of music resurfaced across generations, cultures, and institutions, and why people felt compelled to return to it at that exact moment. Today isn't about repeating what everyone already knows. It's about the final chapters surrounding Richard Smallwood, the last days, the reactions that followed, and what his legacy revealed about the role music plays when words fall short. And one detail from those final weeks explains why the response was so different this time. According to publicly released information, Richard Smallwood spent his final period of life away from the spotlight, receiving care at a rehabilitation and nursing center in Sandy Spring, Maryland. Those close to him did not describe a sudden or chaotic situation, but rather a gradual medical decline that had been ongoing for some time. There were no dramatic public updates, no interviews hinting at a farewell, no orchestrated final appearance. And that, in itself, says a lot about how Smallwood lived. Despite decades of recognition, Grammy nominations, national performances, presidential ceremonies, his final days were reportedly private, structured around care, rest, and dignity rather than public visibility. People often associate public figures with constant presence, but Smallwood's influence had already moved beyond that stage, because long before the final headlines, his work had become something people reached for instinctively, not because it was trending, but because it felt reliable. And that reliability would become clear very quickly, because once the news became public, the reaction didn't follow the usual pattern. There were statements, yes, but what happened next was far more telling. Within hours, musicians across different genres began sharing the same reference point. Not full performances, not polished tributes, just fragments. Jazz saxophonist Kirk Whalum posted a short video playing only the opening notes of Total Praise. No long caption, no explanation, just the melody, instantly recognizable. That choice mattered, because Total Praise is not a song people casually perform. It's often reserved for moments of reflection, gratitude, or transition. It's sung when something important is being acknowledged without spectacle. And that's exactly how it surfaced. According to publicly visible posts, choirs, solo pianists, and church musicians didn't announce tributes. They simply let the music speak, which raises an important question. Why that song? Every time. The answer goes back decades and into spaces far beyond gospel music. Originally introduced with Smallwood's group Vision in the mid-1990s, Total Praise was never designed to be a crossover hit. It wasn't built for radio trends or mainstream charts. Yet, over time, it appeared in places no one could have predicted. It was included in Destiny's Child's a cappella gospel medley, placing it in front of a global audience unfamiliar with its church roots. It was performed at Carnegie Hall by a cantor, a space more often associated with classical repertoire than contemporary gospel. And it was sung when President Barack Obama welcomed Pope Francis to the White House, placing it at the intersection of faith, politics, and public ceremony. Each appearance was different, but the response was always the same: silence first, then recognition. Because the song doesn't demand attention, it earns it. And according to Smallwood himself, that outcome was never guaranteed. In a 2024 interview conducted when he was honored at the Kennedy Center, he openly reflected on that uncertainty. When you write a particular piece, he said, you have no idea what's going to become of it. That line would take on new meaning later, because Total Praise was only one part of a much larger story. And the way Smallwood built that story explains why the reaction to his passing felt different. Richard Smallwood's musical identity didn't form overnight. Born in Atlanta and largely raised in Washington, D.C., he grew up in a household where music wasn't separated into categories. His mother, Mabel, regularly took him to hear the National Symphony Orchestra. His stepfather, Reverend Chester Lee C.L. Smallwood, pastored Union Temple Baptist Church, a space deeply rooted in Black church tradition, classical structure, gospel expression, spiritual purpose. Those elements coexisted early. By age 5, Smallwood was reportedly playing piano by ear. In high school, he studied under Roberta Flack, a connection that further blurred the line between sacred and secular excellence. Before most audiences ever heard his name, he was already shaping sound in institutional spaces, including as a founding member of Howard University's gospel choir. That foundation mattered because it explains why his music later felt both complex and accessible, emotionally direct, yet musically rigorous. And it also explains why his influence reached musicians who didn't even share his genre. Throughout his career, Smallwood managed something rare: broad recognition without compromising musical identity. He collaborated, co-wrote, and performed across communities, including co-writing Center of My Joy with Bill and Gloria Gaither, a moment that introduced his work to white Christian audiences while maintaining its original depth. That song became one of the most widely performed pieces associated with his name. But he never shifted his foundation to chase wider approval. Instead, he continued recording live projects, including Journey, Live in New York, and later Anthology Live, capturing performances as they were experienced, not overly polished, not detached from their context. And even when his work appeared alongside legends like Quincy Jones, as part of the all-star choir on Handel's Messiah, a soulful celebration, it retained its identity, which makes the response to his final chapter easier to understand, because people weren't reacting to nostalgia. They were responding to consistency. But there is one part of this story that remained mostly private, until Smallwood chose to speak about it himself. And that decision reshaped how many people understood his music. Long before his final years, Richard Smallwood made a decision many public figures avoid. He spoke openly, carefully, responsibly, about being diagnosed with depression, not in a way meant to provoke attention, not framed as a headline, but as context. In his autobiography Total Praise and in later interviews, he described how music became a stabilizing force during periods that were emotionally difficult. His language was measured, never dramatized, and always focused on what helped him move forward. Music, he said in a 2024 interview, turns off the craziness and brings a light of love and a feeling of peace. That statement matters because it reframes his catalog. Suddenly, songs that audiences already felt deeply took on an additional layer of meaning, not as performances created from distance, but as expressions shaped by lived experience. And importantly, he never positioned himself as an expert or spokesperson. He spoke only from his own perspective, which made his honesty resonate more. Because once that context was understood, the reaction to his final chapter became clearer. When news of Smallwood's passing became public, reactions came from multiple worlds at once: faith leaders, civil rights voices, musicians across genres. Senator Raphael Warnock, senior pastor of Atlanta's Ebenezer Baptist Church, described Smallwood as a musical genius and giant, emphasizing how his songs carried people through difficult moments, not as entertainment, but as support. Civil rights attorney Sherilyn Ifill went even further, noting that while he would often be labeled a gospel artist, his work placed him among the greatest composers of modern music, period. What's striking is not the praise itself, it's the consistency of the language. No exaggeration, no hyperbole, just recognition of influence. And that kind of alignment doesn't happen accidentally. It happens when music becomes part of people's personal timelines. Unlike many celebrated composers, Smallwood's work wasn't confined to stages or recordings. It was used. In moments of grief, in moments of gratitude, in moments where people didn't know what else to say. Songs like "I Love the Lord," which reached new audiences through the Preacher's Wife soundtrack performed by Whitney Houston and the Georgia Mass Choir, became emotional anchors for listeners who might not even know the songwriter's full story. Others, "Center of My Joy," "I'll Trust You," "Anthem of Praise," found life beyond albums, living on in churches, ceremonies, and personal playlists. That matters, because when someone passes, people don't just remember who they were. They remember where that person's work met them. And for many, Richard Smallwood's music was present during turning points, which brings us to an important detail about his final public years. In his later life, Smallwood did not pursue a highly visible final act. There was no retirement announcement framed as an ending, no marketed last performance, no attempt to summarize his career while still present. Instead, recognition came organically. He was honored at the Kennedy Center. His autobiography was published. His work continued to circulate, unchanged. That approach reinforced something his audience already sensed. His music didn't require closure to remain complete. So when the news arrived, the public response didn't feel like loss alone. It felt like acknowledgement. And there's one more layer to this: the way his influence shaped how people define gospel music itself. Throughout interviews, Smallwood consistently resisted narrow definitions. He credited influences ranging from Johann Sebastian Bach to the Roberta Martin singers, from Edwin and Walter Hawkins to contemporary arrangers. To him, genre wasn't a boundary. It was a language. "I think any music that preaches Jesus," he once said, "is appropriate in the church setting." That inclusive philosophy allowed his work to sit comfortably in diverse spaces: academic, liturgical, popular, and personal. And it explains why his passing prompted responses from people who didn't share the same musical background, but shared the same respect. So what remains when the tributes quiet down? Not silence, but continuation. And that's where this story is heading next. When people return to Total Praise today, they're not just revisiting a song. They're returning to a structure. The opening is restrained. The progression is deliberate. The resolution arrives without urgency. Musically, it reflects patience. Emotionally, it reflects trust. And that's why, according to publicly observed behavior in recent days, people didn't rush to reinterpret it or modernize it. They played it as written. They sang it as learned, because altering it would have changed its purpose. In moments of transition, people don't look for novelty. They look for something that holds. And Smallwood understood that. He once said that seeing people embrace his work over the years meant something to him, not as validation, but as confirmation that what he wrote made a difference. That difference is still unfolding, which leads to a final realization about his legacy. Richard Smallwood's influence doesn't rely on constant retelling. It circulates through choirs that pass arrangements down, through musicians who reference his harmonies, through moments where people don't know what else to offer and choose music instead. That's why his passing didn't create a sudden wave that quickly disappeared. It created a pattern, the same song, the same moments, the same response. And patterns like that don't belong to trends. They belong to culture. So the question isn't what comes after, it's what continues. When public figures leave behind a body of work this consistent, the conversation shifts. It's no longer about timelines or final moments. It's about what remains usable, meaningful, and present. Richard Smallwood didn't just compose music that was heard. He composed music that stayed. And as long as people continue to return to those melodies, in quiet rooms, large gatherings, and moments that require more than words, his influence remains active. In the next video, we'll look closer at how one gospel composition quietly became a shared language across faiths, institutions, and generations, and why that rarely happens without intention.